In Conversation with Terry Shepard, award-winning broadcaster, narrator, and author. A deep dive into the writer's craft with the artists and support systems who create the stories we love.
Thanks, Lisa, and welcome to part 2 of this special edition of In Conversation, the conclusion of our visits with authors from Capital Crimes, the Sacramento, California chapter of Sisters in Crime. If you missed the first of our two-parter, the program is available for on-demand listening at terryshepardinconversation.com. We'll visit with 3 more storytellers in this segment, learn about their latest book projects, and discuss what inspires some fascinating people to become extraordinary authors. Judith Starkston writes historical fantasy set in the Bronze Age of the Greeks and Hittites. Her 5 novels bring women to the fore. Whether the Trojan War captive Briseis or the remarkable Hittite queen whom history forgot, even though she ruled over one of the greatest empires of the ancient world. Judith Starkston, welcome to In Conversation.
It's great to be here.
Your new book is Flights of Treason, the 4th and final book in your Tesha series. Why is it the last book?
There might be sub-series that come out with other characters, but she at the end of this book, I won't do a big spoiler, but she comes to a very good place for a ancient queen to be. We'll just say that. And so it's a nice marking spot. I have all these all of my historical fantasies have 3 or 4 plots going simultaneously. I have the Land of the Griffins. I have a sidekick secondary character who's blind, and she has she's a spy. The irony of that, of course, is she particularly finds people who can see the least observant of all people because they only pay attention to the most obvious things. So I have all these secondary characters and worlds that everyone says, well, that's what I love. So maybe they'll just take off and go in their own direction. But my current book that I'm working on is a mythic retelling, which is going back to my first book, which was Trojan War based. This is not Trojan War, it's pre-Trojan War, but...
What draws you to that genre?
The ancient world, I had started out life as a classicist, so that's my academic training. Now, the mythic retelling, there's been this whole renaissance of novels. They're usually about women, and the women who got left out of the mythological story or else who got really slammed. So people like Medusa, everyone thinks of her as the ugly, nasty snakehead person. Read Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes, and you will have infinite sympathy for poor old Medusa. My mythic retelling that I'm doing is this crazy story of Achilles, where his mother didn't want him to go off to the war and die, so she dressed him up like a girl and hid him in basically a harem. And he, of course, got the princess pregnant and things ensue. This story actually got picked up by various operas, like 18th century operas, and great hilarity. Mine is actually more about her, not about Achilles so much, although being forced to be a woman for a while is not a easy... We talk about trans people. Being in the wrong body is uncomfortable. And in my version, at least right now in the early days, his mother actually transforms him. She's a goddess. She can do whatever the heck she wants. So it's a very uncomfortable situation for him.
So who would you recommend for someone that wanted to enter that world?
I think Natalie Haynes is the one with the most delightful voice. She's hilarious. She's a stand-up comedian on BBC. She's a classicist stand-up comedian. How that ever came about, I don't know. And then there's Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller is lovely. There's a book I just finished reading, Ariadne. There's a woman named Jennifer Saint who's written a bunch. There are a ton of them. There's been this renaissance, which is why I decided, for once I should maybe write to market. It's what I love. I could actually write. My series is about the Hittites. Who are the Hittites, you might ask? So does everyone else ask. They don't know because nobody knows. When writing a niche historical fantasy, it's a little of an uphill marketing battle. When I got to this wonderful marketing place, when the series, which is great fun, it's hilarious. It's not purposely funny, but it's a epic fantasy, so it's got magic and a huge battle that's got swords on one side and sorcerers on another, and then griffins, and it's good. It's fun and dramatic, but it's also historically grounded. I really know my history, and no, most people don't know about the Hittites, so it's this culture that, the story of Moses and Pharaoh, that's the time period that this queen ruled. She slapped Ramses around and said, "No, I am not sending that much dowry for my daughter to marry you. You have already stolen enough from me. Never mind." Like, she was really
a very modern woman.
Yes, a very modern woman in her time, and she ruled long after her husband died, and her son was nominally the king and clearly not running things. My series takes place before that sort of later Grand Dame period, which is less fun. I'm writing when she's scrappy and young, and it's uncertain that anything will work out for her, and I give her a whole lot of magic. The Hittites believed in a lot that we would call magic, so I base all of it. The rules, every fantasy has to have, the magic has to follow rules, and those rules for her come straight out of the clay tablets that are the documents of this culture. They actually wrote down, then you do this 14 times, then you do this 18 times. I don't do them repeatedly in my books but some of these things took days. And okay, what's the gist of that? What's the 2 quick actions that I can write in this that will take 2 sentences, and then wham, we're going on.
Judith Starkston is our guest. Her website is Judith, Starkston.com. Flights of Treason is her latest and greatest. What drew you to the classics?
I went to college at University of California, Santa Cruz. I went with the somewhat misguided idea that I'd be a dancer. They didn't have a dance program. I don't know what I was thinking going there, but I loved it once I got settled in, because I heard a professor say, what he'd always wished he'd done was take ancient Greek. And I thought, he seems like a nice guy. I took ancient Greek, and it was all downhill from there.
The thing that always fascinates me about your books is there are so many characters.
Yes.
How do you keep them in such a way that we can keep track of them all?
I give the key ones their own point of view chapters, and I always mark it really clearly at the beginning. And I like to think, I hope, I create a real voice for each of them. But I also give them big personalities. So you know who you're with and you want to be there. A friend of mine who critiques for me and is a good feedback person always says, I get to the end of the chapter and say, darn, the next one's not the same thing. And then I start reading that and say, this is even good and better. And then, oh, no. And she says, you just keep making me read another chapter because so.
That's the secret, isn't it?
Yeah.
You got to get them to turn the page at the end of the chapter of the next one, right?
Not put that book down.
If you were on a desert island and only could take one book, what would it be?
Oh, whatever I'm currently reading. Don't you always fall in love with a book you're reading right now?
When I was in junior high, My Current Girlfriend was my all-time favorite.
Favorite girlfriend, yeah. And whichever child I'm playing with at this moment or whatever, I don't know. Yeah, I'll go for live in the moment and enjoy it.
A very wise prescription. Judith Starkston is our guest. The website is Judith, Starkston.com. I highly recommend Flights of Treason, the 4th and final book in the Tesha series. Thank you for being with us on the show.
Well, thank you so much.
We are in conversation with authors from Capital Crimes, the Sacramento, California chapter of Sisters in Crime. Wherever you may be, you are welcome to become part of the family. Learn how at capitalcrimes.org. Our next guest is Jennifer K. Morita, a former newspaper reporter who wrote her first manuscript during the pandemic while sheltering in place in the fall of 2020. She is the past president of Capital Crimes and a 2022 runner-up for SINC's Eleanor Taylor Bland Crime Fiction Writers of Color Award. Jennifer's debut, The Ghost of Waikiki, will be released by Crooked Lane in November of this year. She lives in Northern California with her husband and 2 daughters, where she is a writer at a local university. Jennifer, welcome to In Conversation.
Thank you so much for having me here, Terry.
It feels like The Ghost of Waikiki has had a long birthing process.
It has.
So without giving away spoilers, tell us about The Ghost of Waikiki.
Sure. So Maya Wong is an unemployed newspaper reporter who reluctantly returns home to Hawaii to be a ghostwriter for a controversial developer. She isn't thrilled about writing a puff piece for a man whose family paved over much of Oahu, and neither are her family and friends. So all Maya wants to do is finish the book and go back to California. But when her new boss's father dies under mysterious circumstances, she finds herself in the middle of murder. And to make matters worse, the detective in charge of the case is her ex. There are a ton of suspects: the disappearing activist, the father and son who are feuding over the family company. Even the charming attorney Maya recently started dating has a motive. And soon, Maya becomes a killer's target and discovers coming home into paradise can be murder.
You balance so much. I was going to promote your website, jenniferkmorita.com, but it's still in development. You have a lot of stuff going on at the same time.
Yeah.
How do you find time to write when you're living the life of a mom, a professional, and doing so many other things?
I squeeze in whatever time I can manage. When I'm working, I eat my lunch at my desk so I can write during my lunchtime. I go to work early after I dropped off my kids at school so that I can leave a little bit early and go home and write for a little bit before dinner. And then I stay up late and I write. And when things are really I'm on a crunch for a deadline, I go away somewhere. I either spend the entire day at a cafe somewhere, or sometimes I book myself into the Holiday Inn downtown because it's like downstairs. There's some great cafes and bars for me to get a cocktail. And that time alone with no one bothering me, I can get a lot done. Like that, this past weekend was fabulous. I had a weekend to myself. The husband, the kids, and even the dog were gone. Yeah. And I got my writing done.
And that blows my mind because you don't have time for writer's block. When you have booked a hotel room, how do you write through that? We all talk about writer's block, but plumbers can't have plumber's block. How do you get through it when you get stuck?
I don't get stuck, knock on wood, for a long amount of time. Sometimes something is bothering me and niggling at me. And if I'm at home, I'll just get up and I usually think I have to cook dinner anyway. So I'll cook dinner. And a lot of times, for some reason, cooking is something that really helps me think of ideas as I'm chopping and kneading the dough or whatever. That really helps me. Taking a walk really helps me when I'm at work and I'm stuck on something, because I write for work too. So when I'm stuck writing at work, I'll just stop and I'll go walk around campus for a little bit. And usually whatever is bothering me or doesn't work out, I can come back, sit down and figure it out. And then I love my Zumba and my hot hula classes. And I feel like you can't really think about writing while you're dancing, but somehow when you're done, the thing that might have been bothering you works itself out and you get a new idea. I think it's mental health. It's also a creative thing too. And so I think that just kind of fuels the writing process somehow. I don't quite understand how or why, but it works for me.
Jennifer K. Morita is our guest. The book is The Ghost of Waikiki. You've been through many revisions on this thing. How do you know when it's done?
Oh, I don't think I did. One thing that I always like to do after the beta readers have read it and I'm ready to send it to my agent or to my editor, I love the read aloud function on Word. That helps me a lot. It helps me smooth out those sentences that are a little more awkward, or it helps me find the word echoes. It helps me realize, oh, I already said that sentence 2 chapters ago. And then I feel like once I get through that process, I feel okay, it's good. Not to say it doesn't get changed again, or because I did that with Lori, and then we sent it then I went through the editing process with Sarah, and then it changed. The beginning part changed quite a bit again. So I think the beginning 2 or 3 chapters have been changed, I don't know, a gazillion times. But each time it has gotten better.
When do you know it's done?
I don't think I'll ever think it's really done. I will probably, once it's published, I will probably never read it again because I will find things that should have been changed. I should have done that differently. I think that's partly why the revision process took me so long, because I kept tinkering with things. I couldn't let it go.
Why do you write?
I think it's just something in me that I have to do. I don't think I'm happy if I'm not writing. I didn't realize that for a really long time because I'd gotten laid off from my newspaper writing job. And it was right when I just had my first child. I was really busy being a first-time mom. So I didn't write for like maybe 1 or 2 years. And then I started freelancing. And that made me feel better. I liked that. I found a purpose again. And I didn't do that as much though. And once I started writing fiction, my mood got so much better.
It's therapeutic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's just something I think I have to do. Whether or not anyone reads me, I think I will just still have to write.
Jennifer K. Morita is our guest. We are looking so forward to The Ghost of Waikiki coming out soon in November of 2024. Let's do the 2 questions. Favorite song?
I Want to Dance with Somebody by Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite songs when I was like, I think the 7th or 8th grade.
What was it about that one that attracted you?
It's just fun. And it just makes you want to dance. And I love my Zumba classes.
And if you were on a desert island and it could only take one book, what would it be?
The Kitchen God's Wife by Amy Tan. Because it's one of those books that you can read over and over again and still find something new.
Amy Tan just is an amazing writer.
One of my favorites, absolute favorites.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to meet her yet?
I did meet her. She was one of the writers at, I think it was the first LA Book Festival. I'm not absolutely positive that it was the first, but I was a student at UCLA at the time, and it was on the UCLA campus. And I was really into her at the time. I had read Joy Luck Club. I think The Kitchen God's Wife was out. Her other books hadn't been out yet, and then Joy Luck Club was a movie, and it just really spoke to me. So I was in line hours and hours ahead of time so I could get her to sign my book. And so that's the only way I've met her. I don't know her personally or anything like that, but I do have a picture of her and I together. Yeah.
What's next?
I am currently plotting book 2 of what I hope will be a Waikiki mystery series. I was working on a culinary cozy about a mochi shop in Japantown, Sacramento. But I think I'm going to retool that and save that for another time. I still really love Maya Wong, and I want to stay in that world for a little bit.
The Ghost of Waikiki comes out in November. Our guest has been Jennifer K. Morita. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Terry. I really appreciate you having me.
You're listening to part 2 of our series of conversations with members of Capital Crimes, the Sacramento chapter of Sisters in Crime. You can learn more about the club by visiting the website, capitalcrimes.org. Our final guest is Anne DaVigo, a journalist for many years covering murder and mayhem on police and court beats for newspapers throughout California. Once, after working with a confidential informant in a murder case, she was nearly sent to jail for refusing to reveal her sources. After she left journalism, Anne conducted a study of the state prison system and worked for 6 years for the California Highway Patrol. She loves mysteries, and her bookshelves are full of the best writers in the genre, including Tana French, Kate Atkinson, and Jane Harper, along with Chris Pavone, and many Cap Crimes talented mystery authors. Her latest book is Night Flight, coming out in September. Anne DaVigo, welcome to In Conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry.
So tell me about how it's so different than Bakersfield Boys Club. How did it come to be?
I grew up in Denver, and in 1955, there was the first airplane sabotage bombing on U.S. soil. Things like that had happened before, other parts of the world, but this was the first one in the United States. And a man named Jack Graham put a bomb in his mother's luggage. She got on the plane, and the plane flew out of Denver, was out about 40 minutes out, and it exploded, and everyone on board was killed. I remember it very vividly because I was growing up in Denver, and Jack Graham and his family went to my church. I didn't know that at the time, but I do remember the fact that after Jack was convicted, went to prison, and was executed, his family moved away and changed their names. That's what I always thought. In doing my research, I found out that his wife didn't change her name, but she did change her name, but continued to live in Denver and up until the 90s when she died. It's very vivid. This story is very vivid. And in doing my research, I came up with a bunch of other things that also tied my own life into Jack Graham. And so I created a girl. She was older than I was then. She's a girl in high school. She's a lonely gal. She has a birthmark on her cheek that makes her kind of an outcast among these snooty girls that go to her high school. She encounters Jack briefly. They have a brief little flirtation, maybe even an affair. But she realizes that he is a very angry and troubled man. She cuts it off, but she becomes more and more entangled in what Jack is up to, which is he's planning the bombing.
Did they get it right in the FBI story? How much of that part of the story is correct?
He did confess. He did confess. What the FBI story, in the very beginning of the FBI story, he's confessing. And he did. He confessed. He later took that confession back, and there was a trial. But in this very first part of the FBI story, he did confess.
What drew you to tell this story? Because you were very drawn to Bakersfield Boys Club for different reasons.
I think one thing is the fact that the family went to our church. And the second thing is that the man who was the pastor of our church at that time was very involved with the family during all this. He counseled Jack Graham's wife. He went down to the prison at Canyon City where Jack was eventually executed and talked to Jack and provided religious counseling to him while he was there. And that minister was the one who baptized me when I was 9 years old. So there's that connection. The other thing is something, and this is, Terry, this is so crazy, and I never knew it at the time. Jack went to a Denver electrical shop and bought the timer for the bomb. And it turned out that the woman at the counter who sold him was my next door neighbor. I never, ever knew, and I don't think my parents even knew. I don't know if she kept it a secret or what, but when I started researching this novel and saw a picture of it, I thought, oh my God, that can't be my neighbor. So I did a bunch of research on it, and it was indeed my neighbor who testified at the trial that Jack Graham came to the counter at the electrical shop and she sold him the timer, which he lied about. He said it was going to be for a well that he had up in the mountain.
It's a pretty good lie.
Yeah. So all of these things and the whole milieu of Denver and of the world in the 1950s. At the time that this all happened, Ike Eisenhower was in the hospital there in Denver. He'd had a heart attack, and he spent like 6 weeks, if you can imagine, 6 weeks in the Army hospital there in Denver. So at the same time that this was happening, Eisenhower was there in Denver with the press coming in and out, people coming from Washington there. The press corps were all hovering around. Mamie Eisenhower was there. So all this was, and there was a crime family that pretty much controlled all of Colorado during that time, all the prostitution and gambling and stuff. And that was all kind of bubbling around in here too. So it made this very rich soup for a novel, for a mystery novel.
It's a hard thing to pull all that stuff together and make it readable, but this story is very readable. How did you do it?
I worked on it. I thought, now, how would this happen? How would these pieces all come together? And in researching it, I found out I tried to create places where the two might intersect. For example, Ike used to go to a fishing camp up in the mountains, and Jack Graham's mother had a ranch up not too far from where Ike's fishing camp was. So I thought, I could work that in somehow. And he never met Ike or anything like that, but I thought, well, maybe I can figure that part out, which I wove that piece in. And then there was a very popular restaurant in Denver that was owned by the crime family. And I thought, maybe they could go there and have dinner. I worked all of these kind of little pieces in to make this soup that became and is becoming, I'm not done with it yet, it's becoming Night Flight.
What's the early feedback from people that you've shared this story with?
I don't remember anything about that, which is crazy because it was one of the worst incidents of sabotage in American history in the 20th century. It was the seminal event of the 20th century. When we think about 9/11 now, we think about that. But actually, the bombing of Mainliner 629 back in the last century was really almost the 9/11 of that century.
Anne DaVigo is our guest. Her website is AnneDavigo author.com. We're talking about her forthcoming book, Night Flight, which will be out in September. Where are you in the process right now?
Oh, I'm about 80% done.
When it is done?
Oh, I have it pretty much worked out. As people say, I'm not a planner, but I have an idea where it's going now. I started out and I thought, okay, I have a girl, I have the bad guy. How is that going to happen? And so I just write and I feel my way through. But I have a pretty good idea what's going to happen now. So,
do you have a sense for what story you want to tell next?
Yeah, I do. And this is so crazy. But Jack Graham had left 2 children. There was a boy who was about 3 years old at the time and a girl who was 6, I think. And they changed their name, of course, after this because it was a terrible thing to be this man's son. He grew up and played football in the local high school. He and his wife, after he graduated from community college, he and his wife moved to Seattle. And the 2 of them disappeared and no one ever heard from them again. And they did a big investigation there. They never found out what happened to him. And I don't know if he disappeared because of what had happened in his family to his father. I don't know if a family member of someone from the plane murdered him, but they think it was a murder. That's one of the sources that I read said they thought that. But so I think I'm going to find out what happened to Jack Graham's son.
So you may actually provide closure through your research.
It could be, yeah. But I just thought of it the other day. I thought, what happened to that guy? Poor kid. Yeah.
That's very journalistic. It's like you're going back in time and actually researching a true crime.
Yeah. Because the research that I've done for this book is just fascinating, very interesting. And I've had a lot of fun doing it. The Denver Public Library is amazing. They have a history section, and I would ask them a question, and pretty soon I get 40 pages worth of stuff, newspaper clippings and census records and stuff. They're just so wonderful. So that's been really fun.
We're talking with Anne DaVigo about Night Flight, her latest book, and about her forthcoming novel, which is still percolating in her mind. Let's ask the 2 questions. Favorite song?
Oh, favorite song, Hollywood Nights. Bob Seger, a Detroit boy.
How does a person of your geographic location become infatuated with a Detroit guy like Bob Seger?
When I was just starting out in journalism, which was in my 30s, I was divorced, and my daughter and I would drive up and down the valley. She went to visit her father, and so I would drive her up the Sacramento Valley and to spend some time with her dad. And we'd have the car radio on, and Bob Seger was big. And we would just driving along in my little Volkswagen and listening to Bob Seger. And he's the best. He's the best.
And if you were on a desert island and could take one book with you, what would it be?
Oh, gosh. It might be Faithful Place by Tana French. That's a terrific book. Terrific book.
What is it about that book that speaks to you?
It's about a guy trying to make his family work and figure out what happened to it. And just trying to put the pieces of his family back together. And it's a very moving book. And she did a great job on it. Just a great job.
Anne DaVigo author is the website. Night Flight is the book. And Anne, the author, has been our guest. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Terry. Great to hang out with you again.
And that's part 2 of our conversation with 7 extraordinary authors from the membership of Capital Crimes, the Sacramento, California chapter of Sisters in Crime. Capital Crimes has a robust schedule of programming in person and virtually during the year. They are sponsoring a 2024 anthology and provide a supportive community of fellow travelers for anyone interested in the craft. Consider membership at Capital Crimes with an O, CAPITOL, crimes.org. And if you missed part 1 of our conversation, you can find it on demand at terryshepardinconversation.com. Thanks to Club President Claire Booth and Program Chair Rick Meredith for assistance with this program, and to Donna Wilberg for wrangling my schedule during the Sacramento visit that made these in-person interviews possible.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved. I'm Lisa Davis. Join Terry Shepard next time in Conversation.